Abyssal Murmurs. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next horror stories. Story 1. My uncle's dead girlfriend. Many years ago in Laos, when my uncle was in his late teens, he had a girlfriend who he loved very much. They had promised to love each other forever, and so drank each other's blood. Sadly, when the war broke out, they both were separated. She lived in another village that took a day or so by foot. My uncle arrived to the U.S. and couldn't find any news about her. He eventually gave up and moved on with his life. He married my now aunt, and they have a few children together. On to the present, which this happened a few years ago. My uncle became sick and has been having bad dreams lately. We did a ritual for him and came to find out his ex-girlfriend had passed away. She has been looking for him and has been coming to his dreams, making him sick. At first, he wore that red necklace and it did help a bit, but that help didn't last for too long. We eventually changed his name and it has been quiet for a bit. My aunt, uncle's sister, is a Christian. So one night, she decided to pray out loud to God for help. She also prayed to the deceased ex-girlfriend and told her to leave him alone. She is already dead, and he is now married and have kids. For her to move on and go reincarnate. That night, my aunt had a dream that she and my uncle was stuck in a huge house. No matter where they run, the ex-girlfriend would chase behind them. They finally made it to the door, and right when my aunt opened the door, the ex-girlfriend was right in front of her. She grabbed onto both of her hands and said, "No matter where you guys hide him, we had already drank each other blood, and he will never escape me." My aunt immediately woke up after that. Nothing has happened after that, but I believe when the time is right, my uncle will have to fulfill his promise. Story 2. The Woods. My house is next to these woods, and to the side of the woods are stores. Above the woods, where my house is at, is a Mexican trailer park. As for the bottom of the woods is a highway. I decided that walking in the woods was going to be pretty fun, and it was going to be a great adventure. It was around 3 p.m., and I went in the woods, exploring a bit. I also started singing a random, goofy, exploring song. I really wasn't paying attention to what I was singing until I heard someone at a distance. I stopped singing, and the noise got closer and closer. I stopped and listened closely to what it was, because I was curious. It sounded like a little boy singing something, maybe a little girl, I wasn't sure. Since I wasn't sure, I kept quiet and kept walking. The voice got nearer and nearer. I saw to my left that it was a little Mexican boy with shorts, Snickers, and an oversized black dirty shirt. The boy didn't notice me, I think, and so I just kept on walking. Then the next thing I knew, his voice was ahead of me when I had just passed by him. I was confused and stopped to think for a bit. If he was behind me, how could his voice be in front of me, I thought. So again, I walked ahead, saw the boy, and paid no attention to him. The same thing happened again. I heard the boy singing and I stopped. I thought to myself, oh, hell no. I got out my phone, plugged the earbuds, and listened to my music. I turned up the volume so I can't hear the singing. Instead of looking to the left, I looked to the right. When I got out of the woods, I took the long way back home, instead of going back inside the woods. Later on, when I came home, there was this flyer at the corner house that I saw. There was this photo of a boy. It didn't really caught my attention, but the last seen description was what got me scared. He was last seen wearing shorts and a black t-shirt. Gave me the chills as I walked inside my house. I never saw him after that. Story 3. The Haunting Secrets of a Family Legacy. Okay, so just a quick backstory. My family is very fond of encountering ghosts, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was passed down to me low. However, with me, it's scary for me because I'm only 16, and I was fond of it because it wasn't that bad. Obviously, as I got older, it just got worse. Haha. I often hear and dream about things that aren't normal, but I told nobody about these occurrences because I like to think it's just nothing serious. Eventually, I gave in to telling my grandma from Minnesota, who then took it seriously and gave me a bunch of shaman-like things. Things wrapped in red, and even a red bag with those red and white strings to keep on, because I guess she took it seriously, but I laughed it off. When I came back home from Minnesota, I remembered setting the things up on my bed. I stopped having bad dreams and so on, but this one day, the necklace was hurting my neck pretty badly. So I took it off this exact day before night. I remembered my grandparents from my stepdad's side came and swept the house with those things you keep in your house, on those golden papers to keep ghosts out. That night, I had the worst nightmare ever, Lo. I had a dream that my friend was telling me about one of her boyfriend's dead aunt. She said her name and told me specifically to not tell anyone this story or she'd come for me. But I obviously didn't believe her. I told my mom about it, and I kind of just laughed about it. But when I told her, I knew I messed up because the tension got eerie, and I started feeling paranoid, like someone was watching me. I told my mom how I was feeling, and we immediately went to my grandparents in Minnesota. It was strange, because before I could even tell my grandma, she already sensed something was wrong, and told me she was going to see a shaman. She came back an hour later, and told me in hung that I was at fault, and I was told not to tell anyone about the dead lady. It threw me off because my grandma had said her name so perfectly, and that sent chills down my spine. My parents and I left shortly after that, and for some reason, the roads was dead silent and no traffic. But of course, it's my dream, and so I had teleported back to my house. My house had a scary hallway, and I felt as if someone or something was gonna come around the corner. Something that wasn't human. I panicked and called my parents to get home, and so they rushed home. But the thing was close to turning the corner until my parents entered through the door with a male shaman. The shaman came up to me and told me I'm going to crack these 3 eggs and see what's going on. He cracked one, and it was full of blood. He cracked the second, and it was also filled with blood. He cracked the 3rd, and it was filled with black ooze. He shook his head and told me in Hmong, the lady, her name, is very mad at you and is done being patient and is going to come for you. I was scared as shit and felt like the tension got worse. I thought something was going to happen since I couldn't wake up, but luckily my boyfriend's alarm went off and I woke up. I was scared as shit, and ever since that dream, I never took my necklace off again. Also, my mom thinks I might be a shaman, but I don't know, Lo. Story 4. Demon impersonates my cousin. One night, I went and slept over at my grandparents'. My grandma had readied the living room so that my cousin Ethan and my brother Cody can join me when they come back from a night out. Ethan and his siblings lived with our grandparents, so it was normal that we all slept over there often. In the living room were 2 couches. Longer one was up against the wall facing the TV. The second one was smaller and perpendicular to the longer couch, but facing a small dining room. I slept on a rollaway bed that was set next to the smaller couch. I watched TV and fell asleep with the TV on. I heard my brother and cousin come home, and they hopped on the couches, as expected. They turned off the TV and that was it. Dead silence as we all slept. Sometime in the night, I woke up and realized Ethan and Cody wasn't sleeping in the couch anymore. It was dark, and I looked around to see if they were really gone. They sure were. But then I saw my cousin standing in front of the wall heater that was next to the hallway leading to the bedrooms. It was dark, so I could only make out a silhouette shape of him. I called out his name and he didn't answer. I called out again and asked why he was just standing there. He didn't answer. Then he suddenly turned towards the bedrooms and walked that way. I thought maybe he was sleepwalking, but then I also thought to myself how weird I felt. Like something was wrong. I ducked under my covers, and I suddenly felt like the room was on fire. Like scorching hot. I was too afraid to look out from under the covers, so I stayed put. A few minutes or so, I could smell something burning, and strangely enough, I could smell rotting meat. I thought maybe something was on fire in the kitchen, so I had an adrenaline rush and pulled the covers off me, only to see that my cousin was now standing in front of the TV. It was still dark, and I could still only make out a silhouette shape of him. I called out to him again. No answer, but he looked like he was just standing there slightly, swaying side to side. OHELLNO. Under the covers, I go. I did not come out from under there till the morning. I did not sleep. When I saw the morning light, I finally had the courage to pull the covers off me again and discovered my cousin and brother were sound asleep on the couches. The floor was littered with maggots. Front door just to the right of the TV was cracked open. I see a dark-colored brown, almost black, cat just outside the door, sticking its paws inside, trying to grab the maggots by the door. Just as this was happening in front of me, my grandma woke up and we both searched for the source of where the maggots came from, to no avail. When my brother and cousin woke up, I asked if they had left the living room sometime in the night and came back later. They said no. I told my grandpa, who is a shaman, everything, and he gathered that I had encountered a demon, and it must have blocked me from seeing my cousin and brother. This isn't the first time it has happened to me, where in the midst of a haunt, I couldn't see anyone when they were just right next to me. Those stories will be for another day. Story 5. My old workplace.
I used to work with my auntie, second shift full-time when I was still in school.
I know, sounds crazy since I was still in school and I was doing full-time, but I did. I was 18 at the time, and I didn't have much experience with jobs before. The company had 2 floors and a basement. My auntie and I were the only people at the shipping area, since we signed up for this one station that not many people do. One night, I went upstairs to grab more equipment for me to use. As I walked up the stairs to the dark rooms, I felt a cold gust passed by me. I flicked on the light switch, and the lights turned on before I made my way into a smaller room where they had a bunch of cardboard stacked up. I needed to use the bathroom, but the door was closed and I heard the sink being on, so I thought someone was inside. The upstairs bathroom was a one-person bathroom, so if someone was in there, I would have to wait outside until that person was done. I waited for the person in the bathroom to be done so I could go in, but I waited and waited. The person never came out. I even heard the sink go on and off, as if someone kept messing with the sink. They were also walking around and kept stopping each time they took about 3 steps, which I found very weird and strange. I looked down, and that was when I realized that the lights weren't even on. Whoever was in the bathroom didn't even have the lights on. I was scared, but I opened the door, and it wasn't even locked. Still, I just left and went to use the one downstairs. My auntie and I would sometimes come to do overtime on the weekend's first shift. One early morning, we made our way to the workplace, and as we pulled up our car in the parking lot, it was still dark outside, since it was about 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning during the snowing season. There were about 2 other cars parked with us outside. We were waiting for the first shift lead or someone to come and open the company, since it was still locked. We waited and waited until I took a glance at the door and saw someone standing there. It looked like they were wearing a long black coat and black pants, but I couldn't see the rest. The person then slowly unlocked the door, opening it slightly before heading inside. I asked my aunt if she saw it, but she was on her phone. Surprisingly, no one else came out of their car. It was like I was the only person who saw it happen. I tried to tell my auntie what I saw, but she thought I was just playing around. Later, the person showed up and opened the door for us. I looked around and didn't see anyone wearing a big coat like I saw. Another creepy experience was during the third break when it was about 10 p.m. I ran out of some materials, so I went downstairs into the basement by myself to grab more. It was crowded because there were so many materials and boxes stacked up that you wouldn't even see if someone was down there with you. As I was grabbing one of the boxes that I needed, I heard movements like someone was going through the boxes about a yard from me. I thought to myself, wow, I'm surprised someone came down here by themselves too. I thought it was just me that had the balls to do it. So, I wasn't scared or anything. I grabbed the box I needed as I started making my way towards the elevator. But as I was getting close to the elevator, I heard, "Hey buddy, think you can wait for me?" It sounded like a white guy in his 40s. I turned back and looked as I put down my box and made my way towards the voice. I walked around the area and looked everywhere, but there was no one other than me. That was when I felt a million chills rolling down my spine. The fact that it got so quiet made it worse for me. I ran back and grabbed my box before rushing to the elevator and going back upstairs. Story 6. The Whispering Shadows, a Night of Terror. One night, when I was 6 years old, I shared a room with my 2 brothers who had a bunk bed. I had a regular twin bed. When I was sleeping, I kept hearing my dad talking to someone. So I woke up because his voice got louder and louder. I thought there were relatives over, but it was like 4 in the morning. The lights were on too, so I didn't want to wake up my 2 older brothers and went out to the living room to peek who was there. When I opened my door, the lights in the living room turned off. I thought that my parents went to sleep or something, because their room is on the other side of the living room. I went to the bathroom, came back out, and looked towards my parents' door. The door kept moving back and forth like there were wind pushing it. I went closer. The door stopped and it seemed to close too, but it made a loud screeching noise, so I quickly pulled the door and turned on the lights in my parents' room. My parents weren't home. I saw something dark and a human-like figure behind my parents' windows. It sucked too because there were no curtains to cover it. I turned off the lights and ran back to my room and slept with the lights on. My older brothers woke up and yelled at me, so I told them what happened. When they went back to check on my parents, my mom was there sleeping, but my dad was not. My mom told me she had a weird dream that night. There was this guy who wanted to marry her and kept forcing her to marry him, but she took the knife under her pillow and fought him off. I heard that if you dream about getting married to someone else while being married, it meant that the ghost spirits wanted you to marry them. If you leave in your dreams, you leave in real life. After that incident, we Ornig and my dad was told by the shaman to not have 3 RD shifts anymore to keep our family bond strong, because it seemed like there were other spirits trying to break us all apart. It was kinda creepy. Story 7. Room 666. A Night with the Unknown. Now, story time. So, I checked into another hotel not too long ago. As I got in, the energy was off. It felt very cold, and I continuously got goosebumps. I went out to eat and came back very tired. I laid down to rest for a bit. I left all the lights on. Under the double blankets, the chills continued. About an hour later, I got up to use the bathroom. As I sat up, I looked to the corner of the room, and I saw a lady sitting there on the couch. Rubbed my eyes, and it was gone. Proceeded to use the restroom. As I walked out and looked to my left, she was sitting there once again. I jumped back and took a deep breath. Looked on the floor and found a letter from the hotel asking me to be more quiet. I was sleeping and the TV was off. Fact, I wasn't the cause of the noise. Gathered some courage to walk back out. Saying prayers while packing up all my stuff. Took 2 bags out and left it in the hallway. Walked back in to grab my 3rd bag. As I pulled it away, everything fell out. All of the zippers on the luggage had been unzipped. Now, I'm scared, lol. I went downstairs and asked them for a new room. Told them what happened. They said there were multiple complaints of wall-banging noises and screaming. I told I'm the ONLY1 in there, and I need room change in OW. I'll sleep in the lobby if I have to. Receptionist asked me where all my stuff was. I said half in the hallway and half in the room. He said, "How are you going to get it?" I said, "Emfcare. I'ma tip the shit out of one of you guys to grab it, 'cause I'm not going back in there." Anyways, I got a new room. Never saw a bellboy run so fast out of a room. But he was well taken care of. Story 8. Look at me. Backstory of me. I've been experiencing things for years now. But these past couple of months now, I haven't gotten any sleep paralysis. I would just see some shadows go by. Nothing too big. I just ignore it. Okay, to the story. My body normally wakes up in the middle of the night. So a couple of days ago, I woke up and I remembered looking at my phone. It was 4:30 am. Also, I share a room with my older sister, but she dorms at her college, so I sleep by myself. I always leave my LED lights on in my room because I be scared, lol. But 4:30 comes around, and when I woke up, I decided to just go on my phone for a bit. Then, as time went by, it was already 5 am, so I decided to go back to sleep. When I went back to sleep, I faced the wall, so my back was now turned out to the rest of my room. Literally 2 minutes into closing my eyes, I heard a young male voice, probably in his 20s, whisper to me, "Hey, turn around and look at me. Look at me. MYWHOLASTOMACHDROPPEDOUTMYASS." At this point, my whole body froze up and I couldn't move anymore. All I could do was close my eyes and hope it would go away. I stayed still, shutting my eyes, but it wasn't done. It then said once again, "Look at me. IWASNO TGONNALOOKBCKLOL." So then I felt its presence climbed onto my bed. I'm lying on my left side of my body, so my right side of my face is facing out, if yeek what I mean. Then my right eyes started to slowly open up BYITSELF. I didn't feel it touch me with its fingers, but somehow my right eye started opening up by itself. It felt like I was fighting so hard to close it, as it opened up forcefully. Once my eyes got fully opened, I saw another eyeball staring straight back at my eyeball. I didn't see anything else, but a single eye right on top of mine. I then shut my eyes really hard, and that's when I heard it whisper to my ear, I know you saw me." Then it giggled, not in an evil way, but in a creepy, joyful way. He laughed as a kid, as if he was happy he got my eye to open, and as if he knew he got me scared. Now it turns into a dream. Once I shut my eyes, it sent me straight into a dream. In my dreams, I heard my mom getting ready for work upstairs. I ran out my room trying to get to my mom, but as I went up the stairs, I crawled up. As I went up each step, everything was zooming away from me. Everything seemed so far, and I was moving in slow motion. My house turned into black and white, and it looked run down. I tried shouting for my mom, but with every try, nothing came out. I tried so hard to scream for my mom, but nothing. As this was all happening, I could feel the spirit behind me, and I could hear him laughing. Then boom, I woke up and turned on my room light. I looked at the time, and it was only 5:04 a.m. Man, it felt like hours. For the rest of the night, I didn't sleep at all. Story 9. The Dark Shadow. It wasn't easy being the eldest of 6 and 6 girls at that. My parents were hard-working people, trying to make an honest living. We hardly ever see them home, and it didn't bother us. They were either working late nights or sleeping during the day for work. It never occurred to us that they were gone so often, because when we actually get free time with our parents, they were unforgettable moments. Growing up with 5 siblings has its ups and downs. For one, we all had to share a bedroom, and second, we all helped each other with chores. We're great as a team. Everyone got along and no one was ever jealous of the other. It wasn't until I entered my first year of high school that we moved out of that small 2-bedroom apartment and into a 3-bedroom duplex. You can only imagine the excitement when my parents told me I got a room all to myself. We all agreed that I would get the room facing the backyard. One weekend, as my mom and aunt was getting ready to attend another aunt's funeral, I saw my little sister Pachia running around. I, unknowingly, followed her up and down the stairs, and at one point, came to a realization that I ended up outside by myself. So, as I re-entered my home, I saw her again and continued to chase her into my parents' room. I quickly opened the door and yelled, "Pachia, Koje wa dabtes," but walked into an empty room, staring at my own reflection in the mirror. As I stepped out into the living room, I saw her sleeping on the couch. Actually, all 5 of my sisters were there. Who have I been following? I ran to my mom, who was drying her hair in the bathroom, and I said, "Naeem, Cov," but I couldn't utter another word. She became concerned and asked if I was okay, but I just walked away. I didn't know how to tell her. I mean, what was I going to say? One hot summer night, we decided that we would sleep in the living room where the AC was running. I slept on the couch and my sisters slept on the air mattresses. Everyone fell asleep, but I couldn't. I just kept staring into the darkness and eventually turned onto my left side and closed my eyes. Then I felt a finger touching a strand of my hair. "Nai, go to sleep, okay?" I said quietly, convincing myself that it was my youngest sister, but that just made them pull my hair even harder. I reached my arms out to push them away, but felt no one. I even waved my arm around to feel for someone and still nothing, but the finger was still holding my hair. I covered myself with my blanket, and then it went away for only a second. I began to feel a tugging on my foot. I became afraid, filled with fear. I found the courage to turn around and see who this person is. The moment I turned around, I saw a dark shadow. A small child, but before I could make out the face, it ran off and knocked over our TV, causing a big boom. I was restless that night and a couple more nights after. Things became more and more strange around the house. I would open the front door to go to school and see someone sitting there at the bottom of the stairs. Have dreams of someone calling my name to go outside. It became a part of my routine, and I started to be okay with the hallucinations. Every night after that, it became a living nightmare as I slept all by myself in my new room. I always left the door open, so if anything were to happen to anyone in the house, I would hear. Not that I could do anything to help, but still. However, it suddenly became the worst idea. I kept seeing someone at the door, a small figure, sitting as if they were sad or scared. I spoke to it, hoping it was one of my younger sisters. Dad. What? No one answered. I closed my eyes to try and fall asleep, but steps moved closer towards me as the creaking of the floor became louder and louder. Whispers of "wake up, I'm hungry" was said throughout the night. Then, nothing happened for a while. One particular night, on my mom's day off, I went to take a shower before heading to bed. I turned the shower on and filled the bathroom with steam. Before stepping into the shower, I looked in the mirror for skin imperfections. Suddenly, at the bottom of the mirror, I saw what looked like a little girl. Her hair was long and black. Her face and skin was covered in dirt, but why was her arms backwards? As I stood frozen, this apparition started to sob. She looked up crying and said, "Pop Cove." I ran so fast to the door, but I couldn't seem to open it. As I struggled with the doorknob, I saw her coming closer and closer to me. At the corner of my eyes, I saw her feet. Small, dirty, rotten feet. I yelled for my mom and AIMPABKUVOS, pounding harder and faster on the door. Fortunately, my mom got the door to open, and I ran into her arms. I told her exactly what happened, no matter how crazy I sounded. There was a little ghostly girl in the bathroom, talking to me, and without hesitation, she yelled for my younger sister to call our grandma. I said, "Why?" She pointed behind me and I slowly turned around. To my horror, I saw maggots and dirt on our bathroom floor, and then the smell of old garbage filled the house. My grandma arrived and did the usual hung spiritual thing that they do. She spat water all over the house and threw dry corn kennel to flush out the spirit lingering in our home. Each time she did that, I saw a shadow running away from her. Eventually, they took it outside and it ran away. She found out that the little spirit girl was our great-grandfather. He came to look for my grandpa, but my grandpa no longer lives with the family. He didn't have a shrine set up in his home, thus making it difficult for our great-grandfather to locate him. All my great-grandpa wanted was money and food. He needed us to sacrifice a cow and burn some money for him in the spiritual realm. He came to me because, for one, we didn't have a brother, and second, I was the oldest. My grandma told me that he took the form of a small child to disguise himself to be one of my younger sisters, but he panicked and became a stinky ghost. After the sacrifice, we never encounter paranormal events with him again. Story 10, Footprints. Hello, all HGS readers. Figure I might as well share one of my stories since work's a little slow. It was probably the winter of 98 or 99 when one of my buddy's mother passed away due to a car accident. Her car was rear-ended, which caused it to slide into an oncoming traffic. An SUV struck the driver's side, killing her instantly. From what I heard, her left leg was crushed, so they had to amputate it in order to remove her body. The funeral services was as normal as could be, just like any other traditional long funeral. A week after she was buried, my buddy called me up, wanting to party to forget about her mother's death. Always looking for a reason to drink. Some buddies and I started our ways towards her home. Now this is already late December in MN, so snow was falling pretty darn hard by now. There are at least 5 to 6 inches on the ground already. We got to the house, went straight downstairs, and got everything prepped and ready to drink. The doorbell rang. She ran upstairs to open it up. All of a sudden, we heard her scream at the top of her lungs. We all ran upstairs expecting to see an intruder. All we saw was her pointing out the window, crying and terrified, saying, "Neum, Cov, Neom, Niob, Tom." Then we heard knockings, as if someone's going around the house, knocking. My buddy called her dad, telling him to come home immediately. Of course, we hid all the alcohol. When he came back, we went to check and saw single footprints hoping around the house. The dad went inside and grabbed some paper money, burned it, and said, "Koji Niam, Koji Tube Mus Lom, Kav to CJ Mus Zoo. Tax Hablos, Yeli Koji Rau, Koji Kove Mainam." Wife, you're already dead. Please go peacefully. Don't come back and do that to your kids. We eventually stayed the night, as her brothers were also our friend. The next morning when we got back out, I went to look at the footprint one more time. The footprint looked fresh. I remember thinking to myself, that couldn't be. It's been snowing the whole night. They moved out of that house shortly after. Story 11. Chilling memories when my father wasn't my father. So this is a true event that happened before my father had passed away. Now, at this time of year, my father was in the middle of health issues and became very sick. One day, my family adopted a puppy chorky for my father. Of course, like all homojis think, pets are like guardians for the elder. Anyways, we named the puppy Penny. One evening I was with Penny lying on the couch in the living room watching TV, and I was facing the hallway where the 3-bedroom/bathroom were. I heard my father get up from his room with his walker and went to the bathroom. When he came back out, and he peeked at Penny and I. Now, at this point, I thought he was trying to catch a glimpse of what was on TV, but instead, I felt this eerie vibe and looked at my father. Heck, no. What he was doing kind of scared me. He stuck out his tongue and kept rolling his eyes, blinking at Penny. Knowing my father, he is a quiet and easygoing guy. He would never do anything embarrassing like that, but that day he did. When I asked him, "Daddy, what are you doing?" the look on his face was just a stare with a simple smile, smiling at me, and he walked back to his room. After this, I really didn't think anything of it. A couple of months after my father passed away, my mother decided to tell me her stories about all the paranormal experiences that happened to my father while he was sick. She dreamt of ghosts trying to take him away. And that's when I told her about the experiences I had too. She looked terrified and yelled at me, saying, how come I didn't tell her earlier? Then she told me that it wasn't my father. It was a ghost who took over his body because he became weak. If it was him, he would have never do anything like that to embarrass himself. After this experience, that's when I got goosebumps and realized what just happened. But he sure did leave a memory. Story 12. Oak Island, Wausau. Oak Island. A public park in Wausau, Wisconsin is a beautiful scene. However, it is known as a haunted park. Honestly, I don't know why they call it such a name, but it is connected to many other well-known parks in Wausau, such as Riverside Park. My boys and I often camped there, especially back in 1993-94. A bunch of Wausau boys and girls would go there to hang out, set up tents, and camp. I remembered too many boys pouring out liquor for dead homies and all. Often, I would ask them why they would do such a thing, 'cause since those homies are dead, you should leave them alone and let them rest. However, some of the boys refused to let go of dead homies. Tales are told of many nights that the guys pour out liquors for the dead. They would see strange things that same night. They would see ghosts and other weird stuff. Here's my personal story. Although I never poured out any liquor, one weekend night, a friend and I were supposed to meet up. Our 2 cars are supposed to go and pick up a party crew and go to a house party. We decided to meet at the convenient parking lot at Oak Island Park. I got there first and decided to turn off the engine and waited for my boy. I'm a smoker, so I cracked the window about an inch down on both sides. I kept the power on for radio and waited patiently. Around 9 p.m., an old white lady came at me on my window side. She was hella out of breath and started to panic. She said that her husband is in trouble and I needed to help her. I was scared and asked her what was wrong. She kept saying that her husband is in trouble and I need to get out of the car immediately and help her. Otherwise, her husband will die. I was way too freaked out, so I told her that I will drive to the nearest gas station and have them call police to come and help. She said, "No, there isn't time. If you don't help now, my husband will die."
Something is trying to pull my husband into the ground.
Elle freaked out. I repeated, "I will go to the gas station and call the police." Suddenly, she reached out her fingers into the crack of my window and said, "Touch my fingers. Touch my fingers." I got so scared I rolled up my windows, even though her fingers might get pinched. She retracted her fingers and started pounding on my window, yelling, "My husband is going to die." I started my engine and quickly sped off. In my rear view mirror, I couldn't see her, but when I physically turned as I was driving off, she was sprinting at me so fast. I said to myself that there was no way an old lady can run this fast. Later on, I heard all sorts of stories about this island. Too many stories that I thought most was fake, until I heard the story that a man and his wife went to the island. The man got pulled into the ground while his wife tried to help him. They both got sucked in and died. I still thought the story was fake and refused to believe any of these stories because none of them make sense. However, I do remember what I saw that night. I never called the police and I never went back. For some reason, I still think about it today and wondered if I should have gotten out of the car. Maybe someone was really in trouble and I failed to help. Or maybe something was just trying to get me in a trap. I don't know. I'm still scared, but I also feel hostile for fleeing. I don't believe that ghosts can hurt me physically, but sometimes I wondered if they want to collect my soul. I'm glad I got away that night, because I don't know if it was a ghost or a prank. Thankfully, I didn't take the risk, and I'm still alive today. Story 13, The Cry. They say if you hear someone crying out of nowhere in an unexpected place, don't go looking for it, nor answer it. Elders know these things, and it was years later that I finally thought, thank God my mom told me it was just a cat. Here's my experience. I was young. Our garden was out in the country, and there were trees and bushes surrounded the area, as well as a cornfield. A few Hung family had their gardens there too, But the day we went, it was just my mom and I. Our field was out at the very end, next to the cornfield. As I went to work, snatching the growing grasses around the vegetables, I heard a cry. My mom was far from me, but not that far that she couldn't hear me. We were a good distance from each other, working side by side. As I stopped what I was doing when I heard this cry, I listened closely to see if my ear was just hearing things. The crying stopped. I shrugged it off and went back to work. A minute has gone by. I heard it again. It sounded as if it was crying just in the cornfield and only feet away from me. I got spooked because I was like, why would someone cry out in the open like this? And why is it crying in the cornfield? When I heard enough, I yelled out to my mom. I asked her if she heard it too. She looked at me and told me that it was probably nothing. Maybe just a cat. I thought, it's possible, but why does it sound so much like a human being? I went back to work, and yet I kept on hearing it. I told my mom again, Mom, don't you hear it? What is it? It sounds just like a small baby crying. And by small, I meant like an infant crying its lungs out. My mom replied, saying it's nothing, and maybe I'm just hearing stuff. The crying got louder, and it was unbearable. Thoughts were going through my mind, like what if someone purposely tried to kill their unwanted baby and left it there to die? What if someone just forgot about their baby? And what if I know it's silly, but then again, it's possible. It was a silent evening, and any sounds that move, we can hear it. It was so strange how I suddenly heard a baby crying in the cornfield, and yet it's so close to me. But I couldn't see exactly what direction it was coming from. Just a couple of minutes after all that commotion, my mom quickly grabbed a few vegetables and told us it's getting late and we should get going. The crying stopped. We got into the minivan and drove off without looking back. On the way home, my mom told me it was not human, and it was possibly a pognextuge, however you spell it. She didn't want to scare me. That was why she said what she said. She pretended she didn't hear anything, so the pognextuge couldn't do anything. If we get scared, it'll make itself more noticeable. It feeds on fear. Afterwards, I had heard that the area of gardens is haunted. That is why there was hardly any Hmong family gardening there. And even though the price for field was cheap, it scared away too many people. That season was the first and last time we ever gardened there again. Story 14. Whispers of the Past. A love that defied death. As a child, my mom once told me this story about how in each life, our life is bonded with our past. A long time ago, one of my faraway aunts, Aya, was 15 years old at the time and had a birthmark on her face under her left eye. My faraway grandparents were afraid that she would not find a good person to be wedded with, therefore forced her to marry their uncle's Sunzong, who was 27 and his left hand was crippled. She didn't know what to do but agree to marry him. As time went on, she became depressed and started saying all the time, why in this life am I forced to become someone's wife who can't even work, give me food or money? Why didn't I get another chance to be born with a normal face? Each time she cried, Zong saw. He would come out and wipe her tears with his right hand and say, "Don't cry. Although my left hand is crippled, if you fall off a cliff, my right hand can still save you." One day, Aya got tired of her helpless husband and had gotten up early to look outside and kept gazing out. Far away into the fields, she saw the mountains and plants and that there were no weeds in the field. She kept gazing further and saw a man who kept waving to her. She rubbed her eyes, and that man disappeared, so she thought she had the green eyes. When you see things that aren't really there. Each morning since, she started waking up early, and the same thing kept happening. So one day she got up and told her husband she needed to poop, but instead she went to the fields. Going to the fields took her a 30-minute walk, but when she got there was the man still waving to her. "Why are you here?" I asked him. He replied, "I've always been here. Every day I see you coming out of your house and crying. I can see that you're not happy." I was surprised he had been sneaking peeks at her from the fields. So she said, "Even if I am crying, why do you keep looking at me from here? Don't you have anything better to do?" The man replied, "I live near here. Every day I bring water to my house to help my mom. She is very sick, so I come in the fields to grab her medicine. That's how I see you every day." That touched Aya's heart. Her husband had never walked to the fields to get her medicine when she was sick. Fetching water was Aya's job. Doing everything was Aya's job. Every day since they met, Aya started waking up earlier and earlier to meet that man. "I know nothing about you." "What is your name?" he replied. "I have no name." "What is yours?" Aya said that she also had no name. The man responded, "You must have a name with a face as beautiful as yours." Aya fell in love with a man with no name, but how girls are in Thailand. They call everyone No. Well, Now became his name. That's when their affair started. Every morning they met at the fields, and Zong still never found out. One day, Aya asked to go meet Nu's mom to see if she was getting any better, because all she heard was news from Nu. Now wouldn't let her go, and they both got into an argument. He slapped her across her birthmark. The next day, Aya decided not to go meet him, and she started thinking that something was fishy. She told her husband to wake up in the morning with her to go to the fields, but when Zong walked up with Aya, the field was empty. There were weeds high enough to her hips. A month later, Aya was pregnant with Zong's baby. A week later, Aya finally decides to ask a shaman about who No is. And the shaman said, "I can only tell you if you give me something that Nu have already given you." Aya thought about it, and there was nothing she had gotten from Nu. So instead, I changed her mind and went to talk to Nu instead. Early in the morning, Aya left her house and brought spirit money and a whole chicken with her. She saw No and tells him she is pregnant and asks him about who he is and why he had hit her. Instead of hiding things, Nu told Aya everything about her past and why she was with a crippled husband. In Aya's past life, she was an average/kind of rich girl. She had a boyfriend, Zong, who loved her very much, but he was too poor to be with her. She finally told him, "Until your hand can break for me, that's when I will marry you." So she left and went to marry No, who was rich and had lived with his mom. Their dad passed away. Aya and Now were lovebirds at first, but then one day, No hit Aya across her left eye for blocking his way when he wanted to go out. Aya's birthmark. Aya had decided to poison the mom, because the mom was always letting Nu go out and talk to other girls. The mom got sicker and sicker, leaving Nu with no other choice but to leave to the fields to get medicine. Aya tried to follow Nu, thinking Nu was going to cheat on her. What happened next was Aya got killed along the way and got raped in a forest and dropped down a cliff. When Nu returned, his mom told him that Aya went to follow Nu, but days had passed and Aya never came back. Now found the poison. I kept feeding his mom and ate it at the fields, waiting for Aya's return. The mom passed away, because there was no one else to take care of her. From what my mom said, Nao's last words to Aya were love song because he was willing to break his arm for you. He can't give you much, but his love to you has been going on for 2 lifetimes. My mom will be your unborn child because you owe her your past lifetime. I will become your husband's guardian angel because he let me have you in our past. You don't see how much you have, but without Zong, no one will love you more than him. Story 15, Lonely Child. This is not my story, but I will tell it in first person. I'm an orphan and the only child. My parents passed away when I was 8. After they passed away, I went to stay with my dad's oldest brother and his wife. They had their own kids, so they didn't really care much about me. But the first year living with them, they cared a little bit because it was when my parents first passed away. Growing up, I was always sad and lonely. They'd make me sleep at the garden by myself. I always asked if my cousins could stay with me, but my aunt always said, Koje manyob koje exwub ma. Yija, sis mwaje dabsov, los tamkoj lios. Then I get a kochia, with just a little bit of rice, pepper, and salt. My aunt, uncle, and cousins would leave me alone. I always cried and called for my parents. Kov niam, kov tuksiv neb niob kov tugos. Kov enko neb os. Hob thiab naim hoabtis hobkov. I would cry and call for them until I fall asleep. I was about 13 when this happened. One night, as I cried and called for my parents, I heard footsteps coming closer. I hid under my blanket and held my breath, so whatever it was wouldn't hear me. Then the footsteps stopped. I heard crying. Then 2 familiar voices said, Minaxis tex hob quajos. WM ko enko koji thieb os. Lamtes ob koj sees lossenrog W muse os. Daughter, don't cry. We miss you too. They don't love you, then come with us. It was my parents. I felt happy and scared. I pulled my blanket off without thinking, and I saw them. Long hair still in their last outfit during their funeral, tongue sticking out. I was freaked out and went under my blanket. I was thinking to myself, it is not my parents. My parents would not come back in this form and scare me. I felt it coming up on me, trying to pull my blanket. At this point, I was so scared and didn't know what to do. Then I prayed to my parents for help. Then what seems to be hours later, probably about 1-2 minds, I felt it get off me and heard it leave. I didn't dare get out from under my blanket. I soon fell asleep and dreamed that 2 tigers came in the form of a man and woman and tried to take me, but my parents fought them away. They told me never to do that again. When I woke up, I felt relieved to still be alive, and I knew that my parents are here with me by my side, watching over me. It made me want to live more and more each day. I still cried here and there when I was sick or missed them, but I never dare call for them ever again. Story 16, Hide and Seek. This story happened back in Minnesota when I was about 6-7 years old. We lived in South Minneapolis, at the time in an old house. My family and I had many supernatural experiences that drove us to leave that house, but I will write about those another time. I have a family of 6, but at that time, one of my mom's cousin from Thailand came to stay with us. She took the room that my little brother and I slept in. This left us to sleep in my parents' room. The first thing I remember was my mom waking us up in the middle of the night. She packed a couple of things for us, and my uncle came to pick us up. My siblings and I stayed at my uncle's house that night. I had no idea why at the time, and I never bothered to ask. When we returned back home, my aunt was gone. Couple of days later, my parents, uncle, and his wife all decided to go to an OG New Year's party that night. That left my 3 cousins, 1 boy and 2 girls, and my siblings, 3 brothers, with us at our house. The oldest out of us was probably around 14 years old. We all had this great idea of turning off all the lights and playing hide and seek in the dark. My cousin Pa and I decided to go and hide in my aunt's closet. We knew the seeker wouldn't be brave enough to check behind all the clothes, since the closet was dark and creepy. Pa and I figured, since we would be together, there wouldn't be anything to fear. I sat at one corner of the closet, and she sat next to me. A couple of minutes passed, and nobody had come into the room yet. Pa asked, "Mai, are you still there? I'm scared." I answered her and grabbed her hand. Her hand was so cold that I figured it was because she was so scared, since my house was known to be haunted. Something just didn't feel right to me, so I reached over with my other hand to touch Pa's head. Surely enough, what I felt was extremely tangled hair. Pa let go of my hand and the light in the closet suddenly turned on, and my brother opened the door. "Dude, we have been calling out for you guys like 10 minutes now. Why didn't you guys come out?" Obviously, we didn't hear anything, but when Pa and I looked at each other, I immediately started getting really scared, and she did too. Pa was seated at the opposite corner of me, 5 feet away, and not next to me. She was way too far for me to hold her hands, or let alone touch her. I know she didn't move, because the distance was too far for her to move that fast without me noticing. We ran out of the closet and into the living room. We explained to my brother and cousin about what just happened. My brother's face went pale. I found out that night, when my mom woke us up to leave with my uncle, it was because my mom's cousin from Thailand hung herself in that same closet Pa and I were hiding in. I wasn't holding Pa's hand or touching her hair. I was holding on to a Pojintuksug's hand and touching the Pojintuksug's hair. I'm not sure if it was my dead aunt or not. All I know is that I won't ever forget how cold that hand was. Story 17. Lady in the Woods. So my friend Deng told me this story a while back about camping. During a hot summer in Minnesota, my friend Deng went camping with a group of other friends. I don't remember how many days they slept at the campsite, but it happened on the very last night. On the last night, Deng and his friends sat around the campfire telling scary stories. Deng sat by the woods, therefore, he had his back facing the woods. As scary stories were shared among the group, Deng felt a cold breeze hitting him from behind. He turned back and looked, but there was nothing but woods. He thought to himself, maybe it's just a little wind, so he shook it off. Sitting across the campfire, opposite side from where Deng is sitting, is one of Deng's good friend. As Deng made eye contact with his friend across the campfire, Deng sensed that something wasn't right. Deng's friend looked pale and scared. Later on that night, when everybody was getting ready for bed, Deng asked his friend, why did he look so pale and scared during the campfire? All Deng's friend say was, I'm too scared to tell you. Let's wait till tomorrow morning. So they both went to sleep. The next morning, everybody was packing their stuff and ready to leave. Deng decides to ask his friend one more time. His friend told him that yesterday night, during the campfire, he saw a lady limping out of the woods coming towards Deng. She had black, fuzzy hair and was wearing a white dress. As the lady approached Deng's back, She bent over and stuck out her long, wet tongue and started licking Dang's head. Story 18. Bioduin Temple in the Valley of the Temples. In 2010, my family and I went to Oahu, Hawaii for vacation. One day we decided to tour the Valley of the Temple. We heard there is a beautiful Buddhist temple there, and it was a popular tourist site. This place is basically a huge graveyard with beautiful, well-kept graves and well-manicured lawns. Driving through the graveyard, I wasn't scared and thought it was very beautiful, and that maybe only rich people could afford to be buried there when they died. To get to Bioduin Temple, we basically had to drive through a long, curvy road to the back end of the property. There stood Bioduin Temple, gleaming in the sunshine, surrounded by a moat with koi fishing swimming in it. My mother-in-law and aunt-in-law didn't want to go, so they stayed in the van. I left my 2-year-old daughter with them, so I could go explore the temple with my husband, his sister, and his dad. We took several pictures on the bridge leading to the temple, and then crossed over. On the right side of the temple was a building housing a bell. A long rope was tied to the bell so visitors could ring it, and I guess make wishes or prayers. We decided to each take a turn and rang the bell while my husband took pictures of us. He did not ring the bell. We then walked over to the temple and explored it. There wasn't much to the temple, so the visit wasn't long. We took a few pictures here and there and then left. That night, after a long day of exploring Oahu, we came back to the hotel and went to sleep. We had 2 separate rooms. My in-laws slept in one room, and my little immediate family slept in the other. The next morning, my father-in-law told us that he had a bad dream. He is a shaman, so he decided to do a little prayer/ceremony to ward off the bad dream and whatever might have followed us back to the hotel. I can't remember exactly what he dreamed about because he didn't share many details with us, and I didn't care to pay attention. I'm not superstitious, and since I've never experienced anything supernatural, I don't believe in that stuff. My sister-in-law also confessed that she too had a bad dream. She said she made a wish when she rang the bell, and my father-in-law also said a prayer when he rang the bell. I joked and said that maybe the ghosts in the temple decided to come haunt her because she didn't donate enough money to the temple. Instead of being appreciative that she donated money to them, they decided to haunt her. I didn't make any wish when I rang the bell, and neither did I donate any money to the temple because I didn't have any cash on me at the time. I also didn't dream anything bad, so I thought maybe my in-laws had bad dreams because they just thought too much. That night, after another tiring day of exploring and having fun, my little family and I settled down for the night. There are 2 queen-sized beds in our room. My husband and I slept on one, and our daughter slept on the other. Maybe because I was ridiculing my in-laws, karma decided to come for me that night. While I slept, I had a nightmare. The details are a bit foggy to me now, since it's been so long. But I distinctively remember that a ghost had pretended to be my daughter. I was looking for my daughter, and when I spotted her, I called out to her. When she turned around, it wasn't my daughter, but a scary, unrecognizable face. I was frightened that my daughter had turned into a ghost and didn't want to be near her. I tried to run, but the ghost chased after me and wouldn't let me go. I suddenly jerked awake. I was full of sweat and still scared. It was still nighttime and dark in our room. I was so chicken that I couldn't even turn to peek at my daughter. I could hear that she was sleeping peacefully, so I moved closer to my husband and tried to go back to sleep. It took several minutes before sleep finally overcame me. In the morning, I was still scared and couldn't even look at my daughter properly. I I finally later confessed to everyone about my dream. We all agreed that maybe we three, my father-in-law, sister-in-law, and me, had those bad dreams because we rang the bell at the temple. I know it's just superstition and stupid, but what the heck? There was no explanation why the three of us would have nightmares after visiting the temple. So for those of you who may visit Biodu in temple in the future, beware. Don't touch that stupid bell and anything that may belong to the spirits in that place. Just go visit and come back nicely. Also, don't bring anything back with you either. Thank you for always supporting the channel and welcoming its videos. Wishing you good health, and remember to subscribe to the channel to achieve 1,000 subscriptions.